back in June, they stopped the ability to make this happen. Like go direct, they have to use like all these keys. There we go. Guess what? We're live. I think
All
it is
right.
in 5, 4, 3, 2. We are now live. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Photo Booth Magazine. It's been a crazy, crazy June. I don't know about the rest of you guys. I haven't had time to think all month. I know we've had a show here and there, but we're back, and we've got Peyton Vincent from White Label Experts on the show. Peyton, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. Ever since we spoke after PBX, it's been meaning to get around to it here, and now that we've hit some key milestones with our platform, the timing is perfect. So, yeah, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no. So we've got people that have been chatting about white labeling, and I've seen more chatter than I ever have. It almost seems like every third or fourth post in these Facebook groups is, "Hey, I've got a white label in Michigan. Hey, I've got a white label in California." It's really kind of steamrolling, right? And I think it's good timing that you've put this platform together um, to kind of address this a little bit since it's becoming more common. So perfect timing, and a lot of people out there don't know or don't quite understand what white labeling is. So um, tell us what white labeling is first. Let's get your take on that and explain for the folks out there, like, what is white labeling?
Sure. Well, white labeling is just a subset of subcontracting in its purest form. And so subcontracting would be where you book a piece of business. For whatever reason, you won't be handling that piece of business directly in the servicing part of it. So you hire someone else to service that piece of business for you. The term white labeling gets a little more specific in that you're actually not going to be letting that person use their branding and their promotional benefits that they might get from being there at the event. And
Hmm.
it's going to be your company that they'll be there representing. A good example would be you pay to have a pool put in your backyard. You pay Premier Pools to show up, and then you've got this whole ring of different contractor cut trucks from Southwest Electrical and A plus plastering. All those different trucks are showing up over the course of a couple of weeks, and it's not so important in that world to completely plaster over the names of all those different people, but in certain terms, it can be very important to stick with that cohesive branding across the whole experience for the client.
I like that analogy that you just brought up, like when you get your pool plaster. Because I had my pool, same exact thing happen. I hired a pool company to come and well, the guy who does my pool to replaster the whole thing once we got to that point. And it wasn't him that showed up; it was a whole different crew that came in. And the guy that I hired to do the job didn't show up until the end just to kind of inspect it.
Mhm.
But what was different about that was they didn't have like branding on their trucks. So I think that was kind of like somewhat true light label. But then there's Home Depots and the Lowe's when you go to buy a couch or you buy a refrigerator or dishwasher or a washer and dryer. A truck shows up and it's completely like a white truck. There's no branding on
Mhm.
it whatsoever. And these guys
Yeah.
come in, they put it together. There's the Lowe's or Home Depot contract. You sign it and then you leave, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I
Mhm.
think that's like another kind of what you're saying is white labeling is no branding whatsoever. It's completely as if it's your company going out, correct?
Yeah. 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 And we see, we see a lot of people asking for quote unquote white labeling in the forums, obviously, because I think just like people asking the pricing
Mm.
question, I think they are at a loss of what other way to word it. If you
Mhm.
just receive some one off lead and you're not really a national company, I do think there are cases where people could probably shy away from the white label name in particular. They could probably go to more of a referral route, especially if it might be something that is light on budget and really just needs to be a lead that just needs to float down the river to the next person that could
Mhm.
just handle it directly. But um, there are, I think, the key cases where it's a really important element is if you're planning out a tour. So you're working for a marketing agency or some client, and they're expecting you to be providing the exact same experience in one or two or three or five or 20 or 40 different cities,
Hmm.
different days,
Like
same days, whatever that might be. And
yeah,
that's one
like
of
an
the things.
Apple,
Yeah,
like Apple, every Apple store in like the major cities, they hire you. Now you've got to coordinate finding a photo booth company because I'm not going to Michigan. Let's say Apple hired me. I'm not going to Michigan. I'm not
yeah,
going to Detroit. I'm not going to Seattle. So that's where that would come in, right?
yeah, yeah. So we're working a couple national tours right now that are just spanning pretty much all the way between, March of this year all the way to December. Every other week or so, we're in a different city across the country and giving this one organization the exact same type of booth, same early arrival time, same exact software experience, everything to a T, the same for every single stop. And it's just a completely location agnostic, depending on where we might be in a given week. So we really need our providers to understand all those expectations
Hmm.
and not be putting out a tip jar, not be flowing the lead down to another company below them, and
Hmm.
showing up in their company t-shirts and things like that. So
So
we
does that
really need them
happen?
to button up.
Have you seen that happen when you're white labeling and that kind of stuff happens?
Everything under the sun has happened. I mean, we actually have been quite lucky, and I think in my 20 years of doing special events, we've had maybe two no shows to clients, and
Hmm.
one of them dates back to the DJ days where the client had signed a contract with the wrong date. To them, it was the wrong date, but they still signed it, so we weren't there. Really, their
Oh
fault.
no.
But we had a white label in a more remote city, a place that we didn't have a very reliable person we've used many times. And there was this mysterious, very serious car accident that may or may not have occurred roughly 90 minutes before showtime. And
Oh,
it was just all communications went dark, and it was a selfie of a person in a operating room, but not really showing their face. And so I think it was just a brush off photo
gotcha.
downloaded off Google somewhere. So
Oh my gosh.
um, big thing that was a little bit of a lesson learned. I think we can always refine our processes. And again, we aren't even we're just until recently are we actually putting all of our own white projects through our own platform, which as of a couple of weeks ago, that's what we are now doing. Every event, we are creating an RFP on whitelabelexperts.com and actually putting it out to bid. So we are trying to promote the use and using the free sign up process for people to get listed on there, and then the algorithm on the site will match them based on their location, their service area, and the exact pieces of equipment and capabilities that they have in their arsenal to see if they're a good fit for our events.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. I'm going to show for those who listen rather than watch what I'm going to show. So if you get a chance, go to YouTube or watch it on Facebook. Is they've got a website, right? And this acts. Walk us through this. I'm assuming this acts as your portal, right? For
Yep. This is the
both
homepage here.
for the contractor as well as the white label right?
Yeah. We've it's funny, through the development cycle, one of the hardest things to settle on is the correct or specific enough nomenclature where you could say a white labeler, and that could literally be the person sending the event into the platform or the person doing the event. So we, at least from in our development with my development team, we have customer, which you realize is maybe not the most ideal term, but the customer is the person who is putting the piece of work into the platform. And
Hmm.
then the provider or the supplier, those are the people who will actually be servicing the event, be boots on the ground with the event staff and the photo booth
Hmm.
actually at that event.
So in a sense, the you've got three entities working here. You've got and I'm going to use Apple, right? Apple hires the customer, which is you, to manage all these events around the U.S. for their photo booth events. And then the third one is called what? What do you call that? The
So end client would be Apple.
Yep, and clients
Apple
Apple.
books us to do things in 50 different cities across the country. We would be
Yep.
on this. And if you know the terms B2B, which would be business to business, or
Correct.
B2C, which would be what most photo booth companies are, where it's the photo booth company are working with consumers, so B2C.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
White Label Experts at this time is a B2B platform. In other words, it's only for transacting between two photo booth companies. So one photo booth company hires another photo booth company. So one photo booth company is the supplier. Mm-hmm. One is the customer, even though they are a business. And then both of them are working together to make that end client happy.
Okay. That makes absolute sense. And I'm going to ask them questions because sometimes people won't understand the jargon and lingo that we're using. And so let me ask another question: is Apple allowed to use this platform? Right.
So the key differentiators, and if you go down to the bottom of the page, go to the how it works. Page, little link.
Right here. That's actually what I was reviewing right before we got on. So you have
and then scroll all the way down, and I've got some little flow charts that show you down at the bottom where I'm trying to.
Okay, these here.
Trying to. So the first one is an example of a traditional just two-party relationship where you have the event client and then you have the provider. So provider is working directly for the event client, and this basically maps out all the typical interactions you're going to have from wherever this event actually comes from. So whether you're doing search and advertising, organic SEO, Facebook ads, whatever it might be, referrals, this provider has earned this piece of business, and now they do the entire negotiation, booking process, all the way through artwork creation, creating the event in the iPad photo booth software of choice. We, at least at this time, we're pushing people to stay within the world of kind of the enterprise grade photo booth, cloud-based iPad photo booth softwares. It'd certainly be done with LA Photo Party. They've actually been one of the longest running white label companies. I used to get emails from Brian Miller 10 years ago plus, when they were doing all these movie premieres all over the country. And it used to be this little email newsletter of all these different cities. They were using their Infinite booths at the time, or actually the predecessor to that, and their Photo Party upload software, which so certainly possible. But if you're really trying to keep things buttoned up from a technicals perspective, it becomes much easier with the iPad-based softwares like Snappic and Curator and others, where you build the event in the cloud, create an event code, and you send that event code along to the provider that will actually service the event. And that makes it super simple because they can't mix up the email, text. They won't be sending text from their own phone number. The photos don't get lost because they're auto uploaded, and all the information is also automatically deleted from the device after the event. So that's a key technical part of this whole thing that makes our lives in taking on this project of creating a multi-vendor marketplace like White Label Experts much more viable than it was years ago. But
it takes a lot. Sorry, go ahead.
To get back to your question, this is a B2B platform because what we are basing everything on currently is that the work that the supplier would be doing is not all the marketing, not all the negotiation, taking logos, building artwork, building events, fiddling with photo booths, and waiting for things to drip in over the course of weeks or months as the project comes together. The relationship between, in a B2B setting like this on White Label Experts, is that basically all the information is being passed along to the provider, like, to use the term, like on a silver platter. In other words, like one sheet, every detail laid out all at once, one download, including that very special event code that just allows them to, a few days before the event, type it into their iPad, log in for free, no software to buy, and everything is automatically downloaded, so that we're taking a lot of the value add and time consuming elements off of the end provider's plate, and therefore building in a value add for that middleman to make a profit off this transaction.
Right. And then the white label, the WLE is what we're going to call it. WLE meaning white label experts platform. It goes to the next stage of the white label customer, the person who's done all that hard work, that back office work, the communications with the end customer, has done all that work and now passes that through to the white label provider, right? And that's
Yeah.
the person on the ground with the equipment, and the manpower to then execute on all that work's been done before. And I think this
Yeah.
is important. I think this is something else that I think is going to help the industry is a lot of people, I'm not going to say a lot. There are enough photo booth companies out there that don't factor in the back office work as part of their pricing. They don't consider it, and they think, oh, it's just a 4 hour event. I'm charging only for 4 hours. When there is time consumed planning, communicating, emails, artwork creation, coordinating, that they're not giving themselves credit for to charge their prices. And with this system, I think that you've got here, it really does spell that out, right? It says, hey, look, being in the photo booth industry isn't just showing up and doing something for 4 hours. There's a lot of other components that happen even before you set foot at that venue. And you should be getting paid for it. And a lot of these clients in general that are hiring, are paying good sums of money for perfect execution, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
this is a great lesson. This platform itself just helps, I think, educate people like what they should be charging, and how to be more professional in this industry.
Yeah. 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 And so, I mean, what we are trying to do here is really, I mean, because currently, I think before we created this, the process of trying to find a white label provider, as well as for someone who's interested in doing white label work to
Hmm.
find events, it's Facebook is a platform that is filled with friction and
Hmm.
inefficiencies when it comes to try and make those matches. It's one
Right.
person poses a half cracked question about anyone in Detroit, and that's
Hmm.
all they ask. And there's no
Yeah.
date, there's no specific equipment or when the time is, and no budget. And it's just, then you have people saying, "I am here," or "Sure, let's do it," and it doesn't contribute to the making that match and keeping it efficient. So what we are trying to do is making, if you look at a cost demand curve, it's certainly possible that if you can kill the inefficiencies between a white label customer and a white label provider, by making that match easier, that means that the white label customer could have more uh, competitive pricing to bring that business in, make a
Hmm.
little bit of money in the transaction and creating the event, and then still be able to take care of the white label customer, or the end provider that will do the work. And so, the more efficient you can make it, then everyone can sharpen their pencil a little bit and think about what is it going to take to get all those photo booths. I mean, you and I are both, we come from the DJ world. I mean, I don't know about you, but I originally got into the DJ thing in
Hmm.
1999, and we were talking about this before the show, but I don't think I ever got into it to talk on a microphone. I think it was because I liked
Yeah.
electronics and toys and
Yep. Music.
making
Music.
making music and making things and scratching on my Serato records and things, and versus the other part of it. So all the photo booth toys that we see at PBX and the other shows, I'm sure the manufacturers love it, because we
Hmm.
aren't doing some super in-depth business analysis to figure out if we need a new photo booth or not. A lot of times
Yeah.
it's the me want thing that kicks in, and that's why we've got the cool new toys, like
All the
that
toys,
really,
man. All the
yeah, all the
toys.
toys. So what I'm hoping that we can do is try and just get that utilization factor of all those booths that we have, all that inventory, and get it out there and get it working. In both, people can maintain their existing B2C business practices, marketing at bridal shows, referral networks, Facebook ads, and so on. But then
Hmm.
here's a B2B avenue that um, lets you bring in another revenue source that's a little different. It's not going to be treated as the same. You're not going to be in Photoshop or Canva creating artwork and building events yourself, and you're not going to be charging the same amount that you're going to charge for that end customer work, but it is another avenue that gets you and your staff and your equipment working.
Yeah, and I think another benefit of this really comes down to saving on marketing dollars as well, in a sense. That's what I do. I do marketing. Like, that's my full-time job, and it takes money to spend to get the ads, and even SEO costs money or time, and time is money, right? So it's going to cost you something.
Yeah.
And a lot of the photo booth owners, and I'm just going to 2000 or 2020, actually 2020 was a big year where a lot of people started their side hustles, right? They're like, I got to start a business. So they went out and they bought photo booths, and they don't know anything about marketing. They don't. But they know that they love the photo booth business, and they're having a hard time finding the business. This is a good way for them to find that business. Or, like you said before, I'm B2C, but I've got some dates opened up. It's like, man, I really like to get next Friday booked. Let me go into the White Labeling Extra platform and see if there's anything in my area that matches my equipment, right? Because that's part of it too.
Mhm.
And get and fill in those extra dates and fill in that revenue where I didn't have on next Friday. But yeah, this is
Not to
beautiful.
mention, you could think even larger than that and think about how can you remarket or expand how you market to the world, and maybe try and open up additional revenue streams by marketing in other cities and things, and you could
Right.
actually have more lines coming into you. My business in particular, we've always been very fortunate to be very well positioned in search traffic, and COVID hit. I sat on my bed on a late March evening on a Thursday night, I remember, and I scribbled out a quick little WordPress page with a couple bullet points about virtual photo booths. And that page went to #1, I think, internationally for a couple months, like right in the middle of 2020. And all of a sudden, my
Interesting.
business turned from a service-based local business to we were servicing people. I was doing Zoom calls all over the country, all over the continent, all over the world for virtual events. And so you can think about doing photo booths in the same sort of way. If you're well positioned to service people in other markets, there's no reason why you can't broaden your net and try and bring in customers in other areas.
Yeah, and you're really bridging the gap there with being able to organize it all, because I could come in, and let me just show the screen here. You've got this template, kind of like, this is what is this what we're looking at here? This is kind of the after the event secured, you found your person to fulfill the event, the provider, and this is kind of what they would receive, and literally, like you said, handed on a platter, all the information they would need to execute that event, right?
Yeah. So some of this stuff is actually because we've been hard at work on the development side of actually making this stuff actually interact in the platform. So some of this is templated out to what we were actually having the developers create, that is actually in a more dynamic form in the platform. And we've got another revision coming soon that's going to really spruce up the RFP manager, where you see these events come in, and so on both sides. But really, it's about killing every possibility of something left to chance. And so
Yeah.
My company, we've really adapted. We service mostly corporate events, and so that we found that corporate clients love us so much more if we could just, instead of being there 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour early, if we're there 2 hours early,
Yep.
promptly 2 hours early, and we can get the entire setup done so that it is absolute crickets 1 hour prior to showtime.
Yeah.
Let the staff member take their lunch break, disappear for a bit, change out of some kind of sweaty, fresh clothes, and they show back up. They are a new person ready to go at showtime. And we did not leave that planner guessing to the last minute. Are these guys going to have that thing powered up and turned on in time for the hundreds or thousands of people that are going to be showing up at 6 o'clock or whatever it is. That's been a huge game changer for us, of just trying to set a stake in the sand of say, this is how we operate. But that is not the same. We're contracting or reaching out to people to white label for us, and they're like, yeah, we include 30 minutes. We're going to be like they were going to time themselves based on one of these manufacturer setup videos that, okay, we're here 5:30, and then all of a sudden it's like, get the stopwatch out, because they're going to be ready, like, with barely enough time to take a piss before the guests show up.
Yeah, it's insane. It's like, again, that comes back to the hourly rate thing. People don't realize that, yeah, you're showing up, but then there is a presentation of the business, of yourself to the end client. That's why all my packages we're showing up at least an hour and a half to 2 hours early. And they're like, you're much higher than the other companies. Like, well, because we're going to look good, we're going to smell good, we're going to be awesome, right? And we're going to show up. Your guests aren't even going to know that we set up. They're just going to walk into the venue and like, wow, that does not. And that's actually how I got into it. I was, from the DJ side, I was literally doing introductions at a wedding. Oh no, here comes the photo booth company, dragging equipment across the dance floor to go set up during introductions. I was like, oh my God. And that point, I said, I'm getting a photo booth. I was like, this has to be run the right way. So, yeah.
We had an event just like that up in the Bay Area. I think we were working for Oracle, or big company like that. We had a digital graffiti wall, which is a thing we started doing about 12 years ago. And we had a graffiti wall there, but this very well-renowned photo booth company, they just could not figure it out. And then this planner basically cast them away, like, get your stuff out of here. And because they weren't photo ready within 10 minutes of guest showing, they said, get your gear and get out of here. And their entire, probably multi-$1,000 contract at the time got completely zeroed out for them.
Yeah, I mean, and you could get away with showing up a half hour, an hour for like a small backyard party. That's fine. People are more lenient with that kind of stuff. But you're doing a wedding, you're doing a corporate event.
Yeah,
you better be pricing that accordingly. You better be acting accordingly, because you won't get repeat business if you mess that up.
Yeah.
Another thing, so the platform itself, I mean, I could walk into the White Labeling Experts platform and I could be the person who's going after corporate clients and hiring people. And I can also be the person who's getting hired by people who found. So I can play both those parts in your platform, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When you sign up for free, you're activating both the customer thing that allows you to create RFPs or a request for proposal. That's where you're going to let us know the when, where, and what that you need. And our matching algorithm will go out and find companies in those areas that have what you need and are in that particular market. And then no one has to maintain their availability on the platform. Like if you were a Airbnb host or a Turo host, and you would have to keep everything meticulously updated, probably outside of your normal CRM platform on there. So you don't have to maintain your availability on there, but when a lead does come your way, you get to check your calendar, check your inventory, see if you're up for it, and then you get to name your price that you'd be willing to work for. And then all those competitive bids would land in the RFP manager for that white label customer. They get to see all the bids. In addition, I hadn't touched on the fact that when two people work together on the platform, they both will give each other a verified review at the end of the transaction cycle. So same as Uber or Turo in that respect, that there's no way to circumvent this with sending out a Google link to your grandma and your friends to give us a 5-star review, or Yelp, all these ways to kind of scam these different platforms. This is only if you actually work together that you get to rate that other party. And so the new dashboard that we're creating, let's say you were to create an RFP in Miami to try and find a roaming photo booth for 3 hours. All of the people that have roaming photo booths will receive your inquiry. into their inbox. They'll receive an email notification. They can go in, check their availability, and submit a bid. In that list, and again, this will be our new manager that's coming soon. You'll actually see the list of every company name, the number of miles that their headquarters is from the event, just in case some person somehow got that lead from farther away and got matched and said they're fine driving 200 miles when you've got another great, well-rated person that's 20 miles away. How do you mitigate risk? That's what we do for a living, is basically, if time is of the essence, how do we cut down on risk? And so people can use those verified reviews and proximity as the key differentiators of who would be the best partner. And then beyond that, I mean, we've fielded a lot of feedback from people who are like wondering if, with this small little commission that we plan to make whenever we make a match, if they're asking if we're willing to stamp our seal of guarantee on it if that person doesn't show. White label experts will be liable for that. And the question, or the answer to that, is absolutely not. We are basically just like Uber. We are a technology in the middle of this transaction. We're trying to help make those matches and make things easier than transacting on Facebook, just like Facebook's not responsible for it. But depending on who we're working with, I mean, we might have people that we're calling on a regular basis, and you can handle things very casually with them because you trust them. You trust them to watch your kids, basically. That's how well you know them. But they can certainly knock out a simple photo booth event for you. But someone new that you're working with, we still highly recommend that they would set up a run-through call a couple days before the event, where maybe you have that provider set up their gear. Say it's a 360. Have them set up their 360 camera and everything, log into your event, and then get on a FaceTime call with them and walk through the whole setup. And then let's just see, what little things we might uncover if they're not doing things up to the standards of quality that you would personally be bringing to that event if you were there yourself. We've discovered many times where we think someone's got it all figured out, and then once you get on the FaceTime call, you realize that their iPhone 12 has the screen facing towards the guest on the 360 platform. It's like, nope, that's not a slow motion camera. That is not the way we're doing this. Like, you got to flip that camera around. We got to use the ultra wide on the back of the device, and you get to figure out all those little things that you can help make the event that much better. And so you putting in that work still, just like you would train your employee, you are going to be upskilling these white label providers that you work with. And that is part of it to get the best possible results out there in this world.
So there's a knowledge
and execution.
Yeah. There's knowledge share happening too between the two parties, right? Because you're training people, people are getting paid. So let me throw out a couple you don't have to answer if you want to say, hey, we can't answer these now. Number one, let's say I've got an event, right, that I want to book in Philadelphia, and I already know what I sold it for. Let's just throw a number, $1,200, right, for an event. I'm not going to say what kind, and I get 3 bids, and each one of those is $1,200 or more that they're RFPing. Meaning they say, hey, I'll do this, but it's got to be $1,300. Or it's $1,400, or one's exactly $1,200. Is there room or the ability to then have a one-on-one negotiation with one of those and say, hey, look, I sold this for X amount. Would you come down a little bit?
So as the platform sits on this day, currently there is a budget field when you create an RFP.
Okay.
But again, everything is, in process here. But right now that is just for a personal reference, and it goes in and it is inside the platform, but it's not actually showing up on the RFP. And because we have a lot of events that we're starting to put into it, we're actually getting to be our own customer. And that's really helped us to start to figure out what the little points of friction are, because we really need to be at some target number in order for the whole thing to work, and in order for it to be worth the risk of passing the work along to have someone do it for us. So we are going to be adding an optional budget field that you can make that number visible to the bidders. And so they don't have to just guess outright. We know that every project is different. Sometimes you it might be extra juicy, and you can really, you don't have to scrutinize too much over those bids. And sometimes maybe you're doing a multi-city thing, and in order just to win that piece of business, you really had to sharpen your pencil. It's something I went through with one project last summer where we basically took on this whole list of cities. A lot of them were way off the beaten path, and it was tight. And so we had to really watch it. But with the addition of the target, or like a max budget number that the bidders will actually be able to see, then they can make that decision. Okay, do I have that gear available? Am I interested in working with this person? Do they have good reviews? Again, once we start to, people can actually build rapport on the platform. I see their max budget here. Is that something that I could potentially try and meet? And the answer is yes or no. And it really, there's no blanket answer whether yes for everyone or no for everyone. It's going to depend on each person's own decision
situation,
on how available or hungry, if you want to put it that way, what's their availability. There's a market. So I think that one step will really help. But from a development standpoint, trying to build like a renegotiation engine into the platform is we don't want to make it too complicated or convoluted. So at this stage, there's basically like an approved bid and a decline bid.
So you can't have that. Can you have communication? Let's say I put a bid in, and you're the guy who's hiring. Can you say, "Hey, Art, you're so close to this. Would you come down a little bit?" Is that possible in this platform?
It's something that we're definitely looking hard at.
Okay. We're trying to make it more automated.
At this stage, the workflow, we haven't turned on the chat just for for bidders and things, because part of what we're trying to do is we're trying to build the value and help people through it. Like, we did envision a world where maybe the company names themselves are not even visible. Like, you would basically think of it like Hotwire hotel booking, where you could go on there and look at a certain region, and then it just tells you, oh, this is going to be an Embassy Suites or a Marriott or a Hampton Inn, but you have no idea. And not until you put your money up do you know. But we've backed off that a little bit, and we do actually have the company names right there with the reviews, right there with the proximity to how close they are to the event. So we don't have the chat turned on because we think that people that have their head screwed on straight and want to participate in the process, build their rapport, we don't want to create too easy of an out for them to just go, oh, okay, I found you, that's great, let's just share our phone numbers back and forth and jump off the platform and get this done and save 5%, $50 or whatever it is, when there's so much to gain by staying on and letting the site do what it's designed to do, and transfer all that information across and let people build their reputations on the platform in a verified manner.
That's cool. I'm glad you guys are thinking about that and tinkering with ways to address that, because it's going to come up. Something else I think is also important is, people want to know, is when am I going to get paid? There is some other companies out there that nationwide that do white labeling. I won't name names, just kind of keep it quiet. But one in particular, I know he's either like net 60 or net 90. And for those who don't know what net 60 and net 90 mean, is after the event has been completed, you're not getting paid until 60 or 90 days after the event. So there's almost up to 3 months before you even get paid for the work that you did. How does it work in white label, if you feel comfortable talking about that?
Sure. So at this first version of the site, we are using an implementation in our marketplace called Stripe Connect, which many people are familiar with. The payment platforms like PayPal, Stripe, Square, you name it. There's all these different ones. But so Stripe Connect works together really well in our system, and it allows the funds to be authorized on the card from the customer at the time of booking. The funds are held in limbo inside the platform until the event is completed, and then there is basically a verification that the services were rendered acceptably, and then the money is released to the provider within a few days of the event taking place.
So not 60 days, not 90 days.
No, there's no holding pattern. It's all about. We did we do have an implementation that we are working on that might actually release 50% of those funds to the provider prior to the date. And that's what some of the kind of roadmap stuff on the site does currently say. But at least, again, we're building this, we're bootstrapping this as we go here. And so for simplicity's sake, in the development side of things, all the funds are held 100% of it in limbo as an authorization, and then once the event is complete, 100% transfers to the provider.
So it's like it's sitting in escrow, right?
Yeah.
It's just sitting there, like, here's the money. If you fulfill it, you're going to get it. And then it gets triggered once it's been verified that you completed the job in satisfactory fashion. That's good.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're worried about people jumping into the Facebook groups, which considering there's 15 to 20,000 of them in the larger groups, it's not that hard for a scammer to get in and maybe try and present themselves as someone that might be able to do work, and maybe funds are sent in a manner that they're not protected. So this makes it a little bit easier for those funds to just be really taken care of and not protected both sides. I've got, had to deal with some bad debts from other people that, it's gone months or years, and it's frustrating. And it's not that they were evil but it's just circumstances may be what they are, that you just aren't getting paid. And so this helps to solve any inkling of that possibly happening. And I mean, the other part of it too, I think it really just comes down to convenience. In our world, we've paid people with their credit card, or with paying them by our credit card. We've done Zelle, we've done PayPal, Cash App. I mean, there are so many different ways. And from an accounting standpoint, it becomes a nightmare trying to figure out if these person has been paid at all. Have we paid a part of a balance? And this keeps all of that in one place. I mean, just about every CRM that we are all using, there's maybe 5 of them, the popular ones, right? As far as I know, there's no great kind of downstream engine in there that lets you have a provider easily sign a contract and easily track the payments to that person. In the same easy way that we've all become accustomed to with how we receive money from our clients and how they sign our contracts and stuff. So, which brings me to another thing too, and I don't know if we've really talked about this yet, is in addition to all the different ways that we've had to pay people and that we've been paid being in the white labeling world for many years, is the contract terms themselves. And a lot of people just have these contracts that might have been drafted by lawyers, or they're just some incarnation that came from some other person, and they're all different, every one of them. And so that makes the expectations and things that you have to encounter very different. And it also impacts people, because a lot of times a contract, depending on whoever wrote the contract and whoever they're sending to, a lot of times that contract is lopsided in the favor of the person whose contract that belongs to. So a photo booth company has a bride sign a contract. That contract is filled with things that favor the photo booth company.
Yeah, it does.
Sneeze on the photo booth, we might be able to charge you a cleaning fee to clean the photo booth. But in the other side of that, just like you're talking about a net 60 or net 90, let's say you get any business from a marketing agency, and now you're signing a sales order, and it's lopsided in the opposite direction, where you are giving up the world to work for that big agency, taking on a net 60 or net 90. A lot of times they can cancel on you all the way up to the last minute, and no money is due. So what we are doing in the process here is letting everyone operate on an even playing field, where it's going to be the same set of fair and balanced terms, expectations and commitments that both the white label customer are responsible for and must deliver upon, and then expectations and standards that the provider must deliver upon. And so when you really look at it as an even playing field, no one side has an advantage here. It's really just thinking common sense, and let's get everyone on the same page to raise up to the same equal standards. You,
Okay,
you
so
get in
you're
an
playing like
Uber, you aren't going to sign a contract with that Uber driver, and every Uber driver has a separate contract about whether or not you get a free bottle of water or a phone charger. We're all booking on the platform and using Uber's standard terms of service. So that's what we are working on putting out there, and hopefully that guide, whether or not you white label on our platform or outside of our platform, we hope that that could be sort of a source of truth for one good balanced way to operate.
so you're like an arbitrator slash mediator slash referee, making sure that both sides are playing equal, being treated equal. And like you said with Uber, if the driver has enough mess ups, he's not driving for Uber anymore. If the passenger is a horrible enough passenger enough times, they're not going to get to use Uber anymore, right? So they're kicked
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I
So that's good.
definitely
It holds everybody
slammed many a
accountable.
taxi door in my early 20s, but I'm very delicate with Uber doors. I'm trying to keep that reputation up.
Oh,
So it's a different sort of animal when you think about maybe you committed yourself to do an event for someone on White Label Experts, but then after you're all locked in, maybe the phone rings one more time the week before the event or the 2 days before the event with something that's more juicy, and
yeah.
you maybe stand to make a couple hundred more dollars out of it, but you've already committed yourself to this other person. Your reputation, your long-term reputation would be potentially on the line if you were to go last minute back to that
Mhm.
customer that you committed yourself to and try and pull the plug on that commitment. You'd be better off taking that one-off person that called you last minute and send them on their merry way along to the next person, and really focus on the long-term process of maintaining a great reputation on the platform, because certainly it's a privilege, not a right, to be there. We want to have the
Yeah.
best people out there, both inserting events, RFPs into the platform, as well as the providers and all the markets across the continent.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna, and I apologize for not diving into the platform as much before the call or before
Mhm.
our call, before our live stream here. But I definitely intend on doing that, and I might actually sign up and maybe take a few. I'm kind of July and August is almost like my vacation time, so I've got some time
Yeah.
to think about that. But I know that I've got the equipment because I'm looking at the site here. You do have some certain providers which you kind of and this is important to look at because in order to be in this, you don't necessarily have to have this equipment, but it behooves you as a photo booth owner to get the brand name equipment because that's what happens when these people are selling the product and you've got SnapPic, Mobi Booth, Spot My Photos, Orca View, every booth. There are a few others in here. We've got Breeze, Max Design, which that's me right there. I use all Max Design products. LA Photo Party, Yoda, and the list goes on. Darkroom, and you're going to be adding more, correct?
Yeah, so we have no official endorsements from
Hmm.
any of these brands. These are just, we've been in this a very long time, and I consider myself I'm a mechanical engineer by trade originally, and
Hmm.
a technologist that's always wanted to find the best out of every software or hardware solution. So we've tried just about every one of those names, and for certain reasons, we always are trying to cut down on risk, just like we were talking
Right.
about mileage from a certain provider to where they need to be, the time and everything. But yeah, like how can you make things as consistent as possible and mitigate risk through relationships, and not have something fail when everyone was there with the best of intentions, but it's just a technical glitch,
Hmm.
or a poorly wired old photo booth that has an old T3 in it and some clunky old software that you would have to log into the booth in order to fix. Like, if you can work with cloud-based software, that's a huge step up right out the
Right.
gate, at least for the simple events. But then if you're doing something more advanced, you just need to know that maybe in order to play at that level, you better have the skills to play at that level and not
Yeah.
just uh, trounce into those waters lightly, because you really, there are definitely skills that come with the higher end, more advanced things.
Right. So you get an advantage by having the better equipment, but that doesn't mean you can't walk in to the platform with an Alibaba booth. I mean, you could have an Alibaba booth, right,
For
and
sure.
still play in the game. But
For sure.
I think most of us know that the majority of these types of events are going to come with a kind of a prerequisite of you better have the good gear,
Yeah. So
especially
when
if
you
we get
build your
paid the higher
platform,
dollars.
when you build your profile, we are going to ask you specific, like, so the most popular manufacturers by companies like Moby Booth and Danny Max and things like that, OrcaView, we are
Mhm.
asking down to, in pretty good detail, specific models and names of different ones. So if we're talking an iPad only ring light booth, are we talking a iPad plus DSLR or mirrorless camera? Are we talking about a, a basic China 360, or are we talking about a 46-inch OrcaView XL heavy duty
Mhm.
platform that, back in the day was costing $7,000 or $8,000? There certain projects might call for that very specific piece of gear, and we're letting the RFP creators either be very general and just saying I want a 360, or
Mhm.
they can get very specific and say I need an OrcaView XL with a mirrorless camera that does 120 in a portrait orientation with
Mhm.
light bars on stands surrounding it and a hotspot and battery powered. So you
Right.
can get very, very specific if you want to, given the project, and you don't have to spend endless hours going on to Google and then onto their websites and back calculating by looking at their photos and trying to figure out if this is a person that might be a good fit for you, because everything is already loaded into their profile.
I think this is great, man. This is nice. I can't wait to start diving in. And first of all, thank you again for coming on the show. And before we go, I do want to kind of point out that you've, and I just kind of showed it. Um, you have education on here, so you have something called Photo Booth University.
Yeah, so that was a project that was born from the year prior, where we signed into this large office space with a big studio, and we really wanted to try and put it to use in creative ways. I
Hmm.
personally, again, mechanical engineer, and always been a problem solver and a guy that's tried to have the best gear with the best processes, best skills, and so on. So we're trying to impart some of that knowledge back into the world. Photo
Hmm.
Booth University was a project from last year where we were trying to monetize that information transfer, and we built a pretty cool implementation that was more targeted at not just trying to upskill business owners, but also to give them a tool to onboard their employees, let them have their own little student accounts so they could go through modules for 360s and DSLR boosts and roaming boosts and so on. The monetization didn't really work out for that, so we're actually going to be repurposing all of that educational content into like a free database of classes and tutorials built into the platform. So anyone who's been onboarded and built their profile will have access to our Photo Booth University courses that cover, again, the entire line of OrcaView products,
Hmm.
a lot of like Moby Booth Aura, roamers, and we aren't just building the booth on camera like a lot of the manufacturers do. We actually take you through each service type has a 4 video series where we cover the arrival and setup, we cover the build process, we cover the actual servicing of the client. So down
Hmm.
to how you might want to hold a roaming photo booth. It seems obvious to a
I
seasoned
I watched
veteran,
that
but
one this year.
let's say you're trying to you brought in a new employee and you're trying to bring them up to speed in 2 hours
This
so
is
that you
it.
can start get them working, because that's how this world is. You sometimes need staff. Rather than spending every last minute teaching them every detail, you can turn
Hmm.
them loose on a set of videos, and then that gives you a great foundation to then answer their questions, show them in person, and reinforce the skill building there. So all these classes will be included in for anyone who is fully onboarded on the platform.
Yeah, I think this is, and I watched this last year. I watched you kind of launch this, and I thought this was great. Because I personally, like when I'm trying to train people, I'll do little videos. Actually, I have 5 or 6 videos of me walking through doing certain things the way that I do them, and a lot of it is
Mhm,
very similar to what you did. But it's
mhm.
my personal that I have a QR code with the equipment, and they go to that special private YouTube channel where those are all at, so they can watch those at the leisure. Because video is probably the most powerful way to teach people other than in person. And it's hard to, have people with their schedules, all show up at a certain place at a certain time and be,
Yeah.
awake during the training. They can watch us at their
Yeah.
leisure while they're sitting on the couch, wherever.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. And so this is so if you're in the White Label Experts platform and you're approved, you get access to all this content, correct?
That's correct.
Wow, that's great. That's fantastic. I think so you kind of like paved the way for an extra value add for White Label Experts when you didn't even know it. Like, that's great.
Yeah, I think again, the more things you try, the more things you'll fail at. And I think, we did fail at trying to monetize an education platform based on some approach that, there's certainly successful people out there that already have built up rapport and are going to have an easier time putting a product like that out into the world. We aren't at that juncture, but all the information is sound, and I think it would be a great supporting tool to help us raise the tide of people that want the same level of expectation, just like we'll be in charge of trying to spell out what those expectations are. If we can show, not just ask for it and demand it of people, but if we can show them how to do it at the level that people are expecting, I think we've built a nice market vertical in there kind of accidentally. And so we're much further into the project than we initially thought, considering we started all that almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, I don't think that was. I mean, you're calling it a failure. I think that's just something you're building on. You built
Yeah.
on, from that, and now you've kind of married two things together to make it even more powerful. So that's just how I look at it. I think it's a great job on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, anything else that we didn't cover that you wanted to tell about White Label Experts before we end tonight's live stream?
Well, for one, getting signed up on the platform is absolutely no cost to do so. So please, we won't be here without the support of the community. We've got thousands and thousands of people in the groups trying to get the best of the best into the platform, get them approved, and start the process of pulling those stupid Facebook posts down of in search of white label and blah blah blah. And once we can build a good foundation, we can really iron out the kinks with simple things like iPad boosts and roaming boosts and 360s and stuff. We really want to expand into being able to market mosaics and arrays and VW buses and maybe even things outside the world of photos. We're going to look at anything that could easily be transferable or subcontracted out that has a consistent user base across the country. We'd like to grow the utility, and because it can be that much harder to find some of those very unique items out there in the world.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be just photo booths.
Yeah, and then on top of that too, I mean, a lot of this is at least as far as like coming up with kind of a quote unquote very final version of what that terms of service is. We want as much feedback from the community as we can possibly get. And just in the same way that a company like Apple, you hear they're not going to create every last feature that someone asks for, but they're going to try and create 80 to 90% of the features that 80 to 90% of the population want. That's how they're a $3 billion or $3 trillion company. We want feedback from the community, and we are not on some high horse that says it has to be this way and we're not listening to you, but we want to try and be the one source of truth, and collaboratively we all arrive at the best version of what a white label terms of service agreement could look like. And again, whether you're on our platform or not, we'd like to head up the battle of creating that for the community.
That's awesome. I do have one more question. I always have one more question. What about the CRMs? Any integration with like Boothbook, CheckCherry, where they're working in their system, they can push it straight into WLE, White Label Experts?
That's definitely something on the back of my mind. I think there's way too much fragmentation for us to take anything on there. Again, there's at least 5 or 6 or 7 that I'm hearing on a regular basis, and for us to try and then the other thing is too that a lot of them are the self-book side of things is very hit and miss. So we we definitely don't want to take the approach of trying to do any instant booking. We don't want to put anyone in a situation to think, maybe just accidentally let someone else know that they're available when in fact they're not. Like you click on that confirm button on hotels.com.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the hotel, you got the price, and it's just you're waiting for that little line to go across as it's contacting the hotel, and then it fails on you at the last second. It just drives you nuts. We really want to err on the side of caution and not build into areas that we're not ready to yet. And we think yeah, I mean, creating an RFP once you're on the platform, it literally will take you 2 minutes to fill in the date, address, time, and pick the gear items that you want. And then it just, boom, goes out there. And then that one action, that 2-minute action there could have 5 or 10 bids coming back to you within a matter of minutes or hours, basically. It's pretty crazy. Now that we are actually using it as our own customer, we're pretty excited about where it's going. And so people will hopefully see that light and come join us.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to be perusing through that, because I know that I turn away enough events that I probably could have used this platform for, in all honesty. So hallelujah, it's here.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a 2,000 square foot office I pay a fortune for, and there are so many booths in there. It's ridiculous. And that's after I've spent years. I mean, people have always given me a hard time because it looks like I'm having a constant fire sale, like leading up to PBX, or I'm getting rid of old iPad booths and these different things. But I keep a pretty tight collection of consistent gear across every service class that we kind of were talking about that earlier today. But we can take on, I mean, I laugh when a planner asks me if we're available, because we basically, with the technology we have at our doorstep here, it's like we have almost like infinite availability. We're omnipresent across practically the world, and we can handle anything. As long as it's not tomorrow, we can handle just about anything that anyone could ever throw at us, basically. That's where we're at.
Cool. Well, Peyton, thank you very much for coming on. Next week, I'm actually going to be in Chicago for the Marquee Show. We had Keith on about a couple months ago talking about that. I'll be exhibiting there. Then we've got the DJ Expo in Atlantic City. I'm going to be there with Max Design. The thing I'm doing in Chicago is actually with the brand new advertising agency they launched. So if anybody's watching this and they're in Chicago, stop by. It'll be roll-up ads. WNBA, and then I'll see you, Peyton, and PBX in February.
Yeah, be there.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Peyton, thank you again. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Everybody, thank you for watching this week. Dave was unable to make it, but we made it happen. So I won't be doing a show next week because I'll be in Chicago, but we'll wait for the word on the next show. Somebody might come on. I don't know, maybe Jason Whaley and Lapley might be coming on here pretty soon. We'll find out. I've got to schedule that out. But they've got their own podcasts and video series that's happening. It's really, really good. So I highly recommend you guys check that out. And we'll see you guys soon.